Hello everyone and welcome back to IMO Reviews. I noticed a little Facebook trend that started amongst my friends where they were listing their top 10 horror movies of all time. And I thought, why not go one step further, make a video of it, and offer you guys some recommendations this spooky season. This is my top 10 favourite horror movies, with 3 quick honourable mentions that just fell short of making the list. Those 3 movies being...
Who is he?
ケイさん、俺の声聞こえてる？
Let's begin. In 10th...
Halloween.
The dawn of an iconic slasher and a Halloween staple on its name alone. John Carpenter's Halloween gets me in the spooky spirit with its timeless theme alone. The rough and cheap feeling to the movie has aged wonderfully, giving the film a rather grubby and dark undercurrent which is only emphasised by the creepy breathing and stalking POV shots of our delightfully enigmatic killer, Michael Myers. I'm sure many of you have already seen this, but John Carpenter's Halloween is a must-see regardless of the season, with a final girl performance for a young Jamie Lee Curtis and kills that are still referenced in pop culture to this day. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing with yourself? Check it out. In 9th...
우선 자기 소개부터 좀 해봐. 그날 일에 대해서 좀.
The Tale of Two Sisters is a South Korean film about 2 sisters returning home from a mental facility and readjusting to normal life. I am being purposely vague with that premise, and I suggest that you do go into the movie blind. I have seen many a synopsis and review give away spoilers, so I will tread carefully with this recommendation. Firstly, the film is stunningly shot, utilising space and sound perfectly to build a suspicious and alluring dreamlike tone at times, with a real subconscious dread being built by the vague emptiness of it all. It is a horror film driven far more by narrative than by scares, so do bear that in mind if you're expecting a bloodbath, because it is not that kind of film. The Tale of Two Sisters is a psychological and slow mystery where you are rewarded for your patience and deep thought. This film is one of the rare occasions where I did predict the ending correctly, and yet I wasn't disappointed. I strangely felt rewarded by the film, that I had followed the breadcrumbs correctly and come to the correct outcome. It's a real fun and different ride, and if you fancy taking a chance on something and don't mind a slower, more mysterious foreign film, then this might just be the one for you. In 8th... I'm usually quite good with body horror, and yet, Audition was the one that had me curling every toe and wincing in secondhand pain. I'm trying to be vague here, but if eyes are a big no-no for you, like they are for me, then yeah, you're going to have a really hard time getting through the finale of Audition, I'm afraid. But putting that aside, you might be surprised to hear I absolutely adore this film. Not only is it stunning, it's utterly surprising, as it doesn't feel like a horror movie at all. In fact, all of this built-up anxiety will quickly subside as you realise you're watching a romantic drama. Audition builds its characters and settings and sinks its hooks into you slowly, making you care whilst equally shocking you with moments of hideous intrigue that slowly turn the dial of dread up one small notch at a time. It's brilliantly made and wholly memorable, with a lingering trauma that any good horror movie should leave you with. It's chef's kiss in my book. In 7th...
I know I'm human. Some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
The animatronics and prosthetic makeup work is out of this world and will never fail to put a joyous smile on my face as some of the most disgusting and putrid creations imaginable wreak havoc in John Carpenter's The Thing. The cast of characters are fun and there's a real sense of action and adventure amongst the rising paranoia in this grippingly tense situation of not knowing who around you can be trusted. It's genius, and arguably right up there as one of Carpenter's best. There's also some really fun and interesting behind the scenes to this movie that I would highly recommend looking into as well, because The Thing is a timeless classic that only gets better with repeat viewings as you notice more detail to the characters and the story each time round, with many threads and theories still being discussed, particularly about the ending, some 40 years later. In sixth,
Mom, do you really want to go and live in that hotel for the winter?
Sure I do. It'll be lots of fun.
despite the author's hatred of this movie, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining serves as a cold and haunting piece of work with infinite details pitted through many scenes to bend the viewer's mind and leave them with a cold chill down their spine. The horror for me in The Shining lies in what isn't being said and what isn't being shown, just what's being hinted at and suggested without any real confirmation. It leaves you and you alone to sit with such dark thoughts that might not even be accurate. Such is the dread and suspense that this film gives off, aided with a brilliant soundtrack that leaves audiences holding their breath as the family look puny and helpless inside these vast and silent halls that seem to be alive themselves. Home to some of the most iconic shots in horror, The Shining is a must-watch that's perfect for the spooky season. In fifth,
Where'd you get this?
On the shelf.
If it's in a word or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook.
The Babadook for me is one of the most original and refreshing horrors of the past 10 years that perfectly blended the psychological horror aspects with physical jump scares, some of which will leave your skin crawling. I love the narrative explored in the Babadook, and while it's not always the cleanest cut and with a very annoying son character that will have you rolling your eyes, I do enjoy the bleak and charcoal setting it plays into and the hugely underrated performance given by Essie Davis here. I love it and I regularly go back to it each Halloween. I'd highly recommend adding it to your watch list this spooky season. In fourth place,
Grandma, you know you were her favorite, right? Even when you were a little baby, she wouldn't let me feed you because she needed to feed you.
I remember seeing Hereditary with my cousin in the cinema and looking at the credits as we stood to leave. I simply nodded my head and thought to myself, now that was a fucking movie. It's a genius piece of work from Ari Aster, a director I don't always enjoy or get on with, but I cannot deny the masterpiece he's so wonderfully weaved together here. With sensational and unnerving cinematography and sound design, and many uncomfortably chilling scenes throughout, Hereditary will leave you saying WTF, and it will have you dropping your jaw and covering your eyes. But above all, Hereditary will have you utterly gripped from start to finish, and it will stay with you for some days after as you try to pick apart some of the underlying themes and meanings that were placed right under your nose. I think Hereditary already has and will continue to age like a fine wine, very quickly becoming a Halloween staple for people like myself. Getting the bronze medal in third place.
이렇게 소문이 바다한 말이요. 무슨 이유가 있는 거요. 이유가.
요새 자꾸 동네에서 사람 죽어나가는 거. 그놈이랑 뭔 연관이 있는 거요?
No movie has quite put a cold chill down my spine like The Wailing. It's a cold and bleak South Korean film that follows a policeman who uncovers some grisly murders that just so happen to occur shortly after a mysterious man arrived in town. It's a gripping narrative that builds with dread that's only further encapsulated by the grey and silent environments of endless rain and solitary mountains. And boy does it build to an almighty payoff that will stay with you for quite some time after. The Wailing is one of my personal favourites, and not just in the horror genre. Getting the silver medal in second place.
Come from? I found it.
Well, let's both play.
You really don't want me to play?
Captain Howdy said no.
Who's Captain Howdy?
The Exorcist was an instant legend of the genre, being banned in several countries with many reports of people leaving and passing out in fear. The public had not really had something like this pushed in their face before through the mainstream, and damn did it leave quite the impression. I could applaud the incredible performances, particularly from a hugely committed Linda Blair who was just 14 years old at the time, or the jaw-dropping effects that have truly stood the test of time. But what works best about The Exorcist for me is the subliminal horror. The flashes and glimpses of nastiness, particularly with Karras having lost his mother and now questioning his faith. It plays into that doubt and uncertainty, which is genius because nothing's more terrifying than not knowing. But the pictures that it does paint are vivid and wildly vile, with a real taste of depravity too. The Exorcist is no holds barred. There's a very nasty edge to the film and it blows the damned doors off and then some. The Exorcist always will be one of the greatest horror movies ever made. And getting the gold medal in first place. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is quintessential horror. In fact, when you say horror, I usually picture something pretty grotesque from this movie, whether it be the ending, or the room full of chicken bones, or the very sickening dinner scene. It's gross, and yet it's exhilarating. My heart never stops racing throughout its maniacal cheap thrills, with a real sense of no one being safe from such a disturbed slasher icon in Leatherface. Straight out of the gates, between the warning and the eerie groaning of the camera showing you some pretty messed up stuff, you know exactly what you're in for with this movie, and it doesn't let up, nor does it let its budget and age hold it back either. There's a real manic rush and tightness to it all that makes it feel so nightmarish. Even in its close-up of eyes or beads of sweat, you can't help but feel on the edge of your seat. You'll let out a huge breath come the end of the movie and realise you'd been holding it for the whole last portion of the film. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre gives you everything you could ask for this Halloween, and I think it's a masterpiece. Thank you for watching this video. Please do hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and please do hit the comment section as well. What do you think of my list? What's your list? Please let me know below. What are some of your favourite Halloween movies to go back to each year? Take care, and I look forward to seeing you on the next review.